All right, so I want to call to order the Southwood Neighborhood Association meeting this evening, May 18th of 2022. I'm Anna Patala. I'm the current president of the Southwood Neighborhood Association. And I want to thank everyone for being able to give up a little of their time this evening to join us for this meeting. Normally, we'd start off our meeting with introductions, but due to time constraints, I just asked everyone to add the name of their neighborhood next to their name. So if you want to scroll through and get acquainted with the other folks and take a look at everyone's picture. But we have a lot of business to take care of this evening. I want to be able to give enough time for our guest speakers and for their Q&A. So I'd asked if everyone would remain muted at all times unless you've been called on to ask a question. We want to respect our guest speakers and each other's limited time to ask questions. So if you need help, we can help you with the mute button if you're having difficulty using it. We're going to be discussing vertical mixed use zoning tonight, and we have two guests to hopefully help us better understand what that means and the proposed zoning changes. Our speakers are Awais Azhar. Is that right? He is with the City of Austin Planning Board. He's a City of Austin Planning Board Commissioner, and he was appointed by Mayor Steve Adler. And we have Barbara McArthur with the Austin Neighborhoods Council, and she is the Vice President. I'm going to ask that all non-Southwood member visitors hold their questions until after the Southwood Neighborhood Association members ask their questions. If time remains at the end of the question and answer portion of the meeting, then visitors will be given the opportunity to ask questions. When you have a question, please use the raised hand function. Have y'all used that before? Anybody have any issues with not knowing what I'm talking about? Okay, cool. So if you use the raise hand function, and please start with if you'd like to ask Awais or Barbara to answer your question, and then share your question. Please refrain from making comments because we're not going to have enough time this evening, and we want to because we also want to concentrate on the questions. There'll be no rebuttals. I wish we could, but we simply are not going to have enough time. Awais and Barbara, please try to give concise answers, and if you can limit it to like 2 minutes, that would be great. That way more attendees have opportunity to answer questions. And I'll cue you if the time has expired. So Awais and Barbara, you'll have about 5 to 10 minutes for your presentations. You do have the capability to share screen if you have any slides. And Awais, I'd like for you to start off this meeting.
Thank you so much all for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Really appreciate it. So what I really want to go over, and I guess maybe I'll introduce myself. So yes, I'm a planning commissioner on the City of Austin. But my sort of day job is I'm a PhD student at UT Austin, and I've been an affordable housing advocate in our community for nearly 9 years now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to go over some of the basics. What I really want to do today is try to walk y'all through as much as possible, and I'm going to be as much respectful of the time as possible. And I really just want to start off by what is the VMU program and go over the changes that are being suggested. But before I start, I want to say, something that exists in almost a lot of other states in the United States is what's called inclusionary zoning, i.e., that we require a certain set aside of housing from every housing development to have affordable units. The state of Texas is among 3 states that has essentially made us illegal to do that. So we cannot require any developer to provide us with affordable housing because the state of Texas has made it illegal. So how we cover this is what we call our developer incentive programs or density bonus programs. And these are essentially voluntary programs for a developer to opt into provide a certain set aside of affordable housing in lieu of increased entitlement. So that's how the programs are functioning. And currently there's a bunch of them in the City of Austin. Here's some of the major ones. So citywide, there's a smart housing program and affordability unlocked. And smart housing largely is different kinds of incentives, not necessarily entitlements. And then there's some geographically specific ones. So there's the downtown and Rainy one. There's an East Riverside Corridor one for the regulating plan there. North Burnett Gateway, so around the domain. There's another one. There's the transit-oriented development, which is at Plaza Saltillo, MLK, and then Crestview Station area. So those are three areas. There's what's called the University Neighborhood Overlay, or UNO, in West Campus. The vertical mixed use program that we're going to talk about today, that is in a lot of these corridors. It's the red on this map. And I'll give you all a little bit of context on the map later as well. And then through plan unit developments or PUDs, we require certain set aside as we do this. So again, the idea here is to voluntarily ask a developer to provide us with a certain set aside of affordable units because of the fact that the state of Texas doesn't allow us to require. So going over some of the basics again of the vertical mixed use program, or VMU program, is it was adopted in 2010 with a neighborhood opt-in and opt-out post process for what sites in your neighborhood did you want zoned to this mixed use part. And Southwood was actually one of the neighborhoods that did do that. They opted in a certain number of sites and have been, sort of great supporters of affordable housing as we move forward in our city's goals. It's largely applicable along core transit corridors, or what are considered core transit corridors. The idea was always to really connect housing to transit. That was also something neighborhoods had wanted at the time, to really have mixed use commercial in these areas. So these are all commercial lots that are on corridors. We're allowing for housing on them while maintaining a commercial frontage at the bottom to really allow some of those neighborhood uses that a lot of folks want in their neighborhoods. And there's a number of development incentives that are offered in exchange. And I'll talk about that in a second, what the development incentive is, but I'll talk with the community benefits first. So really there's affordable housing requirements that are regulated, and I'll talk about what those are in a second. There's increased design standards in regular development. So there's things around where your trash receptacle can be, what kind of screening you have to provide for your garage, how light from adjoining properties can hit properties next door. It requires a mix of land uses so that active ground floor use with commercial is very much required. And I'm sorry, I know I'm going through this fast. I promise I'll answer questions because I know I'm trying to make sure that we get through some of the major points. So what are current the site development standards that are included in this today? So this is what is as of today. So building height is the same as your base zoning. For a lot of places, this is essentially what is 60 feet. And there's compatibility standards that apply. Impervious cover does not change. It is what it is required in the base zoning. There's reduced setback requirements. Again, compatibility setbacks apply. So a compatibility setback is that within a 25-foot buffer, you cannot build anything. So those definitely remain. There's height and impervious cover still remains. So the floor area ratio gets waived, but because of those height and other impervious cover controls, FAR is still controlled. You're allowed to do reduced parking. So you can reduce your parking requirement by 60%. Largely across the city, we've seen that developers don't use this because they essentially provide what the market would want. So whatever the residents of those developments they believe need, they do that. There's a broader range of allowed uses, and that essentially means that on commercial lots, you can now do residential uses, which you wouldn't be able to do without this VMU requirement or an MU requirement or mixed use requirement. And lastly, there's a mix of uses again required around having those pedestrian-oriented commercial spaces at the bottom, and that's a requirement on the first floor. And then there's other sort of requirements on residential. So again, these are sort of the site development standards that we give a developer in order to do this, including some requirements around commercial uses and design. The affordability piece is sort of the biggest piece in what we care about the most coming out of these developments. Is that if you're a rental development, you have to have 10% of all of your housing units have to be income restricted. That is, they have to serve people at certain income limits. And for the rental, what currently existed, it's a little complicated, but in some places it's 60% MFI, in some places it's 80% MFI. Now, what does that mean? I do want to point to the chart at the top right that shows you what that means. So for a 4-person household, 60% MFI is around 60,000 last year, and 80% is around 80,000. That is what our city's sort of median income calculations come to. If you're an owner, and this would be affordable for 40 years. If you're a developer that has only ownership units or condos, and there's very, very few, almost negligible, that have done this, there's 10% again requirement to have affordable units. 5% at 80% MFI, and 5% at 100% MFI. And you have to keep them affordable for 99 years. So you can see again, the bottom right chart of what does that mean for rent? So there's a rents ranging from a little less than 1,100 to around less than 1,500. And for ownership, that will be around 220,000 to 200, less than 274,000. This just gives you an idea of where they have mostly gone in. So these developments have largely gone in. You'll see District 3, District 1, District 4, District 5, and some in D7, with some significant affordable units coming out of those. And that's sort of how we've proceeded. I won't belabor this too much, but we can come back if folks want to look at this later. So what is being proposed? I do want to get to that. That's the important part. What are the changes that we're making? So we're requiring significantly more affordable requirements, and I'll talk about those in a second. But before that, currently, again, looking at the VMU as it is today, the in black, and the what is below in blue is the VMU2, which is proposed. You essentially get to have whatever entitlements were in the existing VMU, and you can have 30 feet of bonus height with compatibility maintained. So compatibility would still be there, even though you're getting to go to 30 feet height. That is what has been proposed and is in the draft ordinance. There's again, those community benefits around different things. I've talked about them. I won't talk about them. The affordability requirements that we're changing, and this is significant, is so we're requiring that for rental developments, you have to do, even in the base VMU, 60% MFI. You cannot do 80% MFI. And for the VMU2, where we give you more entitlements, you either have to do 10% at 50% MFI, so lower than what we had before, or you have to do 12% of units at 60% MFI. So you have a choice. You can either do deeper affordability, so more affordable units, or you can increase the number of affordable units. For sale, it's similar, that we've done 80% for median family income or a fee. I don't want to talk too much about the fee, but the chart at the bottom gives you some of the kinds of fees that were being taught about. And I can speak if somebody has a question on why fees were
I just
being
wanted to give you a 1-minute warning.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. So again, for the ownership, it's at 12% set aside for 80% of the units. So more affordable units or the larger fee. There's also a number of other things that we're including. So you cannot discriminate against someone's based on their source of income. You have to have equitably dispersed units. They have to have good design standards. We're creating more family-friendly units. So we're requiring that bedroom counts are comparable. That's a change that we're saying now. Your units have to be available simultaneously with the market rate units. You have to affirmatively market. So we're really reaching out to the folks most in need. And you have to provide a certain amount of tenants' rights to the people living in those developments. So, and I'll just end with this and we can come back to this. Just gives you an idea of where VMU sites exist today. So this ordinance does not apply VMU to any new sites. The sites where VMU was exist, we're giving a slight entitlement increase for these affordability requirements around source of income, family-friendly housing, more affordable units, and deeper affordable units. And I'll stop there and come back to a lot of these questions, but thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming out and then bring all this great information to share with us. So we're going to move over to Barbara. Barbara, you have the function to share your screen as well. I know that you had some information you can share. All righty.
Hi, Awais, thank you so much for giving a good background. So I'm going to skip a whole lot of what I have at the beginning of my presentation. And I will say that Anna has this presentation and she can share it. And all the links you see in blue go to the documents. So you can actually read the real documents for any information you have. So I'm going to go to this slide where I want to point out that neighborhoods accepted VMU zoning on the corridors because of the guarantee of compatibility. Hopefully we'll retain that. And then I want to talk about this a little bit more. Staff created assessments of how much height could be built on existing VMU, considering the VMU2 bonus of 30 feet and the current compatibility standards. I used their data to calculate how many acres were available at different heights after the impacts of compatibility, because I wanted to see how much land could be developed to 90 feet that wouldn't be impacted by compatibility. When I looked at that, I found that 746 acres could be developed to 90 feet that compatibility has no impact on. So that's about 40 times the size of the Statesman PUD. So even though I think people will hear we have to remove compatibility because we can't use the VMU, this calculation shows that we can do a lot and maintain compatibility for the neighborhoods. 746 acres is a lot. If you look at 60 and 90 feet, that's over 1,000 acres of land in the city. Okay, so the one thing I would like to say, and this is especially in East Austin, is that not all the properties on VMU are CS or GR. They're not all at 60 feet. There are NO properties, which is neighborhood office. There are a lot of properties that are lower zones. So when you give them an additional 30 feet, you're increasing the height of the buildings by quite a bit. In the case of NO, it's 86%. So that's a big, I would suggest it might be better to have the height increase based upon what the current height is than rather than just donating 30 feet. As you know, most of these are in the cores. I made a map you can go to. It's interactive where you can really look at it and see the properties that are impacted. But the second thing that's in VMU that a lot of people don't realize is any tract of 3 acres or more could have a VMU building on it. So besides the things that actually have VMU in the zoning code, any tract that's 3 acres or more could apply by different methods to have a VMU building without having the VMU code. So that's a map. I made this with ArcGIS with city data. So that shows VMU buildings can really be in a whole lot more places than the corridors if people chose them. I think there is concern with the community. I've mapped the displacement areas about what the impact on the areas suffering from displacement would be on the extra height. You can see there's a places close to your neighborhood and in East Austin, there are displacement areas where this VMU proposal is. Now I want to talk about how much affordable housing VMU is produced. VMU zoning has produced around 540 units since 2007, and those are for people making no more than 80% MFI. A lot of people have said that this is our most successful or a very successful program. I said that I had to be a little bit sarcastic at the bottom, but at the rate of 36 units per year, it would take 1,667 years to realize our strategic housing blueprint goal of 60,000 affordable units. So while this is touted as being very successful, it's not making very much of a dent in what we need in affordable housing. Now, there was a thesis done at UT about who actually lives in the VMU affordable housing. Questions have been raised exactly who is living in the housing and whether this housing is really helping vulnerable populations. But the city doesn't collect any demographic data on the density bonus, so we don't know. Now, fair housing will say at a certain time, you can't ask for the demographic data, but there's nothing that says after the people occupy that they should be collecting demographic data, because we really know who affordable units are serving, and that's really, really important. Now, another thing they looked about, which might be interesting, the city doesn't monitor compliance with the density bonus units. They have a contracted third party and they look at the property every 3 years. In a recent monitoring effort, a 10% sample of all density bonus units and the majority of the units were found to be out of compliance to different degrees. So one thing that's really important is if we're giving a lot of bonuses to provide affordable housing, we want that housing to be occupied by people who need it. But part of the problem is enforcing the non-compliance of the density bonus unit cost the city is a big cost burden to take people to court and legal fees. So what happens is at the very beginning, there's an agreement that this is all going to be affordable housing, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of follow-up. And I would urge people who care about affordable housing to ask that we have better follow-up. And I just wanted to, this is a little bit of a non sequitur to the VMU, but I wanted to illustrate our city's commitment to affordable housing. As some of you might know, there's a tract called the Ryan Drive, which is close to Airport and Lamar. And it's city land, and a proposal was put up to turn it over to a private developer. Now, what's interesting about this is one of the private developers, NRP Lone Star, made a proposal where all of the units were affordable. 100% of the units were affordable. These are the bedroom schemes that they had for the affordable units, which is impressive to have a 4-bedroom unit at 30% AMI. This is a real positive thing. Unfortunately, in the staff rubric, this plan got a score of only 13, while the project that won it and provided 48% affordable housing got a much higher score in affordable housing and community benefits. So there's different ways the city itself can change our outcomes, because a personal opinion of mine is the best place we can have affordable housing is on city land. And we can build a lot of affordable housing on city land. And so I think we need to be concerned. We lost 150 units of affordability with this one-day action. And that's 30% of the housing that's been produced over the whole VMU program. And that's a lot of housing to lose because of this choice. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Barbara. So as I had said before, we're going to start with the Southwood Neighborhood Association members asking questions first, and then at the end, we'll allow folks from other neighborhoods to ask questions. So if anyone has a question, if you could use the raise hand function, and we'll call on you. Okay, David. And David, if you'll let the speaker know which one of them you want to ask a question of, and then they'll have 2 minutes to respond to your question. And again, try not to make statements to condense time.
Okay, I'll be really brief. I'm a longtime resident of Southwood and would like each speaker actually to spend a minute describing why you think VMU has not happened in Southwood, even though we opted 17 properties in 2007. And the VMU properties are also part of our neighborhood plan that was approved by council in 2014, yet we haven't seen any VMU properties. Can you each take a turn and describe why you think that is? Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'll let Barbara go first. Barbara, thank you for that presentation.
Hi, I have personal experience because we voted to have our whole neighborhood is surrounded by VMU on Lamar and Burnett. And even though the city document shows that there's VMU developed, there really isn't. Every single developer has refused VMU because they favor just to build apartments. And the cost of VMU and having mixed use, most people who develop housing do not have a big interest in developing commercial space on the bottom. And that was our experience. We've had 7 projects. We've worked with the people and they've all just wanted to build apartments.
Okay, Awais.
Oh, sorry. I forgot to unmute myself. Still learning with COVID. So I think, David, it's two things happening at the same time. I think one, we're not seeing that all the parcels that are zoned are being developed. To your point, we're sitting here quite a few years later, and that has not changed. So what we've seen is that development potential, if it's not there, those parcels are not being developed for VMU. So we see this in North Burnett, we're seeing this in North Lamar as well, some of the eastern side. So essentially, just zoning, it does not mean that automatically somebody will start developing. I think that's one major thing. The other thing I would say is some of the ones that are in Southwood, I sort of looked at it, are also smaller parcels. And we've heard time and time again that, looking at the different requirements around, compatibility, impervious cover, parking, all the things that are important, there really is very little ability to actually develop some of these sites with VMU. So really it's the larger sites where we see that. And I think to Barbara's point, I think moving from residential to that has been not as lucrative for folks, but what we do see is that commercial lots that don't allow residential, so going from strip malls to residential, and we've seen a bunch of that on Lamar, I think a lot of folks are doing that. And I think that's something that a lot of neighborhoods wanted. Right,
Thank you.
I'll stop right there.
All righty. Anyone else would like to ask a question? You can use the raised hand function. Well, yeah, y'all know more about this than I do then. All righty. Joan.
I was just curious, how far along are we on implementing VMU2? I don't understand that. I mean, we've got VMU, but I mean the VMUs, but what about the two? And is that a given or is that just something being talked about?
Sure, and Barbara, you can jump in as well, but John, essentially it was initiated by council, I want to say last November. So last year they initiated change, asked staff to go work on it. Staff worked on it, brought it to planning commission, I want to say earlier this year, and in March, we passed it on to council. So now council is set to take action on it in June. It is not finalized yet. I think they're working on it, but essentially it has been proposed and is moving forward. So council would be taking action on this in June.
Okay. Jill raised her hand through the chat. So Jill, if you'd
Well,
like to
thank you,
unmute.
thank you. Yes.
Who do you want to direct your question to?
Um, I guess probably Awais, but really, I think I should clarify that I had no idea what the topic was for tonight, and I don't know much, if anything, I don't know anything about this topic. So this is very new and feels like a lot of information and feels like before you could ask really relevant questions, someone would need to study this a bit or become better, just more well-versed. But, I had some thoughts that as people were talking, and I wondered about reducing parking requirements. I mean, it just seems like a bad idea, but I heard Awais, I think I heard you say that most developers are not opting to do that because it's not as appealing from a market perspective, but that instinctively reducing parking felt like a bad idea. But I also wondered about the architectural control piece, and do we have, it's so clear that we need to grow affordable housing, but I have a personal fear that we're just going to grow so fast that we're going to end up with just, we're going to look like Dallas, or, you don't Dallas my Austin, just to, coin a phrase. And I'm just wondering if we are doing anything about architectural controls, or are people looking at things? There are so many really large tracts that look like they're going to be developed in areas that always have historically had smaller tracts, and it's going to change so much about the way Austin looks. So I guess I'm concerned about that part of it, and I just wonder what Awais would say to people who have those kind of concerns.
All right, Jill, I really appreciate that. So let me break up the two-part question. Hopefully you'll get a little more time because it's two-part. The first being the parking. So yes, so I should say the parking reduction is in the base, what has already been adopted. So this is not what is being proposed. It's already there. And what we're seeing in most neighborhoods is that developers are not taking the full advantage of it. They might take some of it, but they won't. Part of it is they're just providing what they think the market wants in terms of parking. So, think about it. I think our market is not ready for any development without any parking. The other thing that I would say is that apparently the title companies and loan companies, insurance companies actually require a certain amount of parking. So even if the city said no parking, they have to provide a certain amount. We've seen that. I would just give an example. So in downtown, we don't require any parking. You can build 0 parking spaces. And what we see is apart from 2 developments, everyone has provided parking. And you see that as you're driving through downtown. On the second question, so yes, there's a number of design things. I think one is the compatibility piece and sort of the step up. So one is that next to your single family property, you cannot have anything. There's a 25-foot buffer where you cannot build anything. And then after that, it's 2 stories in there and there's sort of like a step up. That's one design control we have. And then there's design controls around what kind of screening is required, what kind of screening for parking is required. So light from cars doesn't go into neighboring properties, where your trash can be and what kind of pickup it can be, what the frontage looks like on the street side. So there's a number of those things. And then within our compatibility section of the code, there's also design requirements around how that's built. So there's facade articulation requirements, step up requirements. There's a number of different things. I'm sorry if I'm not doing a very good job, but yes, there's a number of things that limit the design. And actually VMU has higher design standards than any other regular commercial or residential building.
Thank you. All righty, Richard? I see you, Helen. You're next.
So I just was wondering, this can be anybody who has enough expertise in this area. Could someone give a very, very quick summary of where the properties in Southwood are located?
Yeah, they're on the,
Barbara, you're
all
welcome
four-
to go. I don't want
they're on-
to hog the space. I'm sorry, go ahead.
They're on all 4 corners of the neighborhood.
Could you give me like a real quick description of where they are, like what they are? Is
Right.
the laser tag lot one of them?
Like Southwood Mall.
Okay,
The Mexican market at South First and Ben White.
okay,
There's property near Manchac and Stassney. Some of the commercial property that's already, it's already commercial, so it would go
Okay.
higher. Let's see, you have a map, right,
Yeah,
Barbara?
I was gonna say, I also had a map as well, and if you want, I can
Here's a
pull that up.
map.
Okay, Barbara, yeah, if you can zoom in on between South First, Ben White, Stassney, and Manchac. So it would be south of 71.
South of 71.
Yeah,
Actually, I have the neighborhood
okay.
cropped out
oh,
in
right
my
there.
slide.
That's our
boom,
neighborhood.
okay.
So you see the orange.
Okay, so it's by the hospital.
Well, no, that orange is the grocery store.
No, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at what I'm seeing.
Okay.
Hospital, the Southwood Mall, the grocery store.
There's some space over by ACC, but not part of ACC.
Okay, I see that one.
And then there's one at I think it's King's Highway. There's like a few small businesses that are there, but you see the neighborhood behind that.
Okay,
And then South First and Stassney, where the what's over there? There's a meat market and where the Time Warner used to be.
oh, the
and
Spectrum,
Baskin Robbins, yeah,
okay,
Spectrum,
okay.
excuse me. I'm old school Time Warner.
Confetti Station, I believe it's called.
Okay. Yeah. So
Can I
yeah,
just-
so on all 4 corners except that one neighborhood spot across from Crockett.
Can
Okay.
I just chime in real quick on this? Which is, I was on the committee that selected these properties in 2007, and generally we opted in every commercially zoned property around the boundaries of our neighborhood, except for apartment complexes, because we didn't want to see affordable housing complexes removed. and a couple of other properties where there were objections from nearby neighbors. And Anna's right, it's mainly at the corners, near the major intersections, where we did this. Thank you.
Okay,
My question is to either, and it's real quick.
thank
Well,
you.
number
Helen.
one, the aesthetics, they all look the same to me, all the VMUs all over town. I can't tell the difference from one to another. And secondly, how, I mean, I can guess, but what, it goes from 2-story or 3-story up to 7 stories. What's going to be the change in stories, not in feet?
Who did you want to answer your question?
Either Awais can answer it, I guess. He's the UT student. We'll give him hard questions.
Barbara
He's the
is also
student.
a pretty sharp tack.
I agree. But I appreciate that. So it's generally right now you have 3 to 5 stories. And from the 3 to 5 stories, you should be able to go up to 8 stories at the maximum. But it's largely going to be within the 7 because the bottom story cannot just be a regular, it has to be 15 feet high for that commercial to be required. So you'd be going, typically you'd be going from 4 to 7 stories.
Is anyone in, Joan, I see you waving your hand.
Yeah,
All
I was
right,
just going to say that with the compatibility requirements, it's not that tall.
Yes,
what it- I mean, they're 2 stories and then they go up a little ways.
thank you, Joan, for mentioning that. Yes, so this would be what would be on the corridor end, and that would be it. On the back end, for 25 feet, there's nothing, you cannot build anything, and then it's 2 stories after that. For another 25 feet, then for 50 feet, you can go to 3 stories. So it's sort of a step up at the back. So at the back, actually, there will be no change in stories. On the corridor end, you would have more stories.
so did you see Alter and Adler and is it Pool? Their proposal that came out at 4:30 yesterday afternoon? Awais?
Oh,
Did
I'm
you
sorry,
see
you're
their-
asking me.
Yeah, did
I'm
you
sorry, I
see
did
the
not realize
proposal
that.
that came out yesterday afternoon in the message board? So
Yes, I
that,
saw.
that would no longer be the case.
So it would still be the case based on what they're saying. So you would still not be able to get to the 90 feet. And I'm sorry, I'm going to mess up the stories here, but you cannot get up to 90 feet for 200 feet from a triggering property. And that would mean you would still not be able to build for 25 feet. You would still only be able to do 2 stories for the, for the another 25. And then
So it's
you'd
like
be able to
2.5
build 2.
stories, I think, because they were wanting to add 5 feet to everything to start with, and then have the step up sooner than what it currently would be.
Yes, but and I'll share what is in there. I'll share that in the chat in a second what was proposed. So it will be like, it's 35 feet, but it's still within that sort of 2 stories that we see. And you're right that from 30, you can now go to 35 and then from 40 to 45, but you would not be able to hit the 60 feet, which is that 4 stories until 100 feet. And you would not be able to get to that 90 feet, which is 7 stories until 200. And I'll share that in the chat in a second.
I've already sent it to the neighborhood too in the Google group. I sent out a lot of links today. So all the ones that were in Barbara's presentation today, I put in the chat because I don't know if I'm going to be able to share her presentation or not because Google has restrictions on how large the files are that we can share. So y'all, if y'all have any links, Awais or Barbara, if there's any other links that you want to share, please do put them in the chat. We are recording. It will be posted on YouTube so that the residents who had other business tonight can view and get educated on this. And it's a lot of information to absorb, y'all. I know, I'm sorry. But if you're feeling overloaded, Jill, I can totally relate. I was in tears yesterday. I mean, it's, some of the legalese in the documents is a little bit difficult to digest. So does anyone else from Southwood have any other questions, or should we ask if there's anyone from any other neighborhoods that want to ask any questions? going?
There were 2 questions in the chat. I don't know. I'll leave it to y'all to see when we can respond to them.
Were they from Southwood? Or were they answered in the chat?
I do not know from who, but Missy had asked a question and then Sam.
Did you get your question answered, Missy, in the chat?
Not yet. It was in reference to, just if somebody wanted to answer it, it was in reference to the apartments he was talking about on Ryan, where are many of the apartments where the developers are just building the apartments and not the VMU. And how come, what are as a city, what can we do to encourage the VMUs where, because if you just build apartments, then you have to build parking spaces for their cars so they can get in them to drive to do their business, rather than putting businesses where their apartments are so that they just basically walk downstairs and do their business.
So Barbara, you had brought up the Ryan Apartments, hadn't you?
So the Ryan Drive is a different issue. There are affordable apartments there. It was the point I was trying to make with the Ryan Drive is that was public land. And a lot of people in the community I live in thought it should be 100% affordable housing. And yet the city chose a project that offered 48% affordable housing. And so that was just a missed opportunity. As far as the VMUs go, you know, they only had to provide 5% ownership and 10% rental units, and they don't want to. And a city, VMU is optional. It's not forced. We did work out on apartments where they didn't want VMU and they just wanted apartments. We worked out a third-party agreement to get 10% affordable housing with an agency, but I think they really shy away from the commercial on the first floor and the expense of the commercial, because typically investors who invest in apartments, that's what they want to invest. That's the view from where I am.
All righty. Did anyone else have any questions in the chat that we're not finding? Because Jimmy's scrolling through feverishly trying to find your questions. And I just want to make sure that no one in the chat got missed. No hands raised. All right, so does anybody not from Southwood have a question? I don't know if we have very many visitors. No?
I was gonna say, I mean, this is not an answer to anything, but I've been kind of disappointed when you see what is on the first floor of these VMUs. I mean, I don't know, I just originally thought there'd be a lot of local businesses and stuff like that. And I don't know, I don't see anything too intriguing on the first floors of those that are around.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions, comments? No?
Well, in regards to what Joan said, there's a couple. Crazy Crepes is very good and
They are actually good.
serves a community that allows a community that's not recognized to have a business there. There's not many markets, and that's what I'm surprised about. There's not many like places to go downstairs, get a loaf of bread and a sandwich type things.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. That was one of the concerns I have, is about it creating, food forests. If the grocery stores go away, then there's nowhere to get food that's not already prepared. But that's a comment. I'm just gonna shut up now. Alrighty, so. Okay, so I guess if no one else has any other questions. Going. Alrighty. Awais and Barbara, thank you so much for all the time that you spent preparing for tonight and for being here tonight and being so patient and generous with your information. We really do appreciate it. And so So yeah, so thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. So
Agreed,
Southwood,
thank
we
you.
still have some other business to take care of real quick before y'all go. Let's see here. New computer and learning how to, let's do it this way. So I wanted to share that our next meetings are going to be on, the officers meeting is going to be on Tuesday, June 14th. We'll be doing Zoom again, and I'll be sending that out a few days before that meeting. Last month we met in my front yard and did a hybrid, so maybe we'll try that again if the pandemic numbers stay down again and it's not too hot. The next general meeting is going to be on Wednesday, July 20th at 6:30 via Zoom. We're going to have a guest speaker from the Development Services Department, who is the environmental inspection team. And they're going to discuss the roles and responsibilities of the team, Austin's tree protection ordinance, and sediment and erosion control measures that are currently in place. And then in September, David Trujillo with the City of Austin Watershed Protection Department is going to be presenting the Williamson Creek Flood Risk Reduction Survey results. I'm sure probably some of y'all got the survey and we were able to participate on that. It was the one about, should we widen the creek? Should we leave it the way it is? Should we add a big tunnel? That survey. So they're going to come and present the survey results for that. Let's see here. We also had the treasurer's report.
Okay, we've had no expenses since our last meeting. We've had a few people pay their dues, so the balances have gone up slightly. And that's it for the treasurer's report.
You give the numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oop. There we
That
go.
one.
Savings is 1,220, 10 cents. Checking is 1395, 39 cents.
Righty. And I believe that is everything. Sarah wanted to share about the community garden, I believe, real quick before we end the meeting. We'll get her unmuted here.
Well, that's something that Mary Olmsted should maybe post to the neighborhood or something, but when we saw her last, she was telling the people at the workday that there were spaces available and one should speak with her. Yeah. about it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other exciting news about the neighborhood?
Yeah.
I just wanted to, Teresa and I were at St. Elmo School last weekend building picnic tables.
Oh,
And we got to check out a cool new labyrinth that is there. Very nice work, Anna.
Thank you.
Mr. Mack was saying he's already had a chance to walk a few kids through it, and that is
That's awesome.
very good for them.
Yeah, he shared a wonderful email with me and said that one of the kids was stressed out about the testing, that they're the STAR test. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was last week.
And that they walked together through the labyrinth to help to settle his nerves so that he could go in and be able to perform better on his test. So it was worth the 5 days that we spent hanging hoses from our trees in the front yard to spray paint them off. And the sunburn that I still have on my feet from the installation. But it's pretty cool. So y'all, if I have a chance, go back there where all those beautiful picnic tables are, behind the school, back by the parking lot, and the labyrinth is right on the other side of the chain link fence. So just go during non-school hours and take a walk and see, you know, what kind of effects it might have for you. I found it to be quite centering. And we picked up 37 bags of trash from the creek this past weekend during the Love Where You Live Day. Sarah?
Yeah,
She's,
yeah,
she's
yeah.
like she's the hardest worker, y'all.
No, I left early. Anna, the other thing I was thinking of mentioning, if any one of us is living near the new houses that are being built all around us, maybe we speak with your neighbors and tell them about the neighborhood association and the meetings, et cetera, and the website and the neighborhood group, web group as well. That
Yeah,
way
please
they can
do.
participate, and, you know, because sometimes we feel that these people are not participating, they're not part of the neighborhood.
I think it's just because they don't know, right?
Right, and we, you know, we don't have the manpower, I guess, to go door to door and, you know, have hand out flyers and such, or introduce.
Oh, Helen, thank y'all for the water. The Boy Scouts really, the Cub Scouts, should I say, really appreciated it. It was quite refreshing.
As far as what Sarah said, do we have some kind of standardized flyer that we can print ourselves, like maybe print 5 copies of?
We don't, but that's a fabulous idea, and I'll be happy to generate one for you.
Okay, great, because I'm horrible at that kind of thing. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'm much better at getting water.
Andy, did you
Anna,
have something you'd like to share with us?
Anna, I'm Andy. I'm one of the business owners on Ben White, and I came to the last time I came to one of the meetings was at the church, and then due to the pandemic, I lost track as well. And I would like to, you know, offer any kind of, we have staff and business services and printers and things. If you need printed out flyers, we have access to that at business prices. My big question was the last time I came to a meeting, I think it was over 2 years ago. I can't remember if the pandemic's been 2 or 3 years. It was definitely before the pandemic. But we had talked about some of the businesses right on Ben White that, you know, and we talked about the vertical units and that a business would be on the ground floor. I have one question and concern. I wasn't sure if anyone else had a concern, but one of the businesses down the street from me is now going to be a drive-through daiquiri place. And I was thinking that might potentially be hazardous to, you know, people that might be going and driving, but they seem to have gotten through the system. Does anybody have any concerns about that? I actually, the last meeting I went to, I thought we weren't going to allow that.
I don't remember ever hearing about it.
Can you tell us what your business is and where this one is?
Well, first of all, the governor passed an emergency liquor to go bill during the pandemic. So that changed what you used to be able to not buy that in Texas. So.
Yeah, but it shouldn't affect zoning. I mean, if a place is licensed for liquor, it should be, but we should be able to zone. I mean, do we really want to drive through liquor store in the middle of our neighborhood to drive through? I mean, they literally drive out. I'm from Louisiana, so I know how this works.
Louisiana does that, which Texas did not until recently.
Hmm?
Andy, what's your business? Where are you?
I'm a physician right on Ben White. We're at 2315, so it's close to, we're kind of catty corner from Victory. Victory's not on our neighborhood, but we're down south. I'm nestled between the pawn shop. There's another lady who was supposed to be here. She's a psychologist. She has the business next door to me. And then, so there's a pawn shop, there's a veterinary place. And then the place that's going to be a drive-through daiquiri is literally 2 doors down from me.
Oh, that's Subway. We used to be Subway.
It used to be a Subway. It's now a drive-through daiquiri place. It's about to open in 6 weeks. But I was a little concerned that those people would go get a daiquiri, start drinking, and maybe even come drunk to my office and maybe take the wrong turn. And I literally was just talking to one of my friends because there is a warehouse next to me that's empty. And we were talking about turning it into a medical business. And there was all this, it's right on the creek and you can't get much land squeezed out of it. And we're like, well, I don't know if that's big enough. And then this guy is like, we're going to turn it into a beer parlor. And I'm thinking, no, you're not, because the neighbors are just going to be out here with me because I'll be like pulling the lights and the sandwiches. And then I came to one of the meetings and they assured me, oh, heck no, we'd never do that. But
So that is actually, I think, in Western.
That's Western Trail. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Western
it's-
Trail.
that one is Western Trail. yeah.
Southwood stops at Manchac,
Manchac,
so you definitely want to reach out to Western Trails to see if they had any.
There's a Western Trails Neighborhood Association.
Yes.
There is.
They're,
Okay, I
they're
might
very
get
active.
introduced. Okay, well, I might get introduced to them then. So yours stops at Manchac and it doesn't go to Lamar?
Mm-mm. Unfortunately, no.
And we're on the
We're good.
south side of Benway.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Well,
that
I'm definitely on the south side of Ben White.
I believe that Sunrise Church is part of Southwood actually, but then
No, that's
that's it.
Western Trails, I think.
I
No,
don't think
it's,
so.
if you look at the map, it does like a little divot there.
Really?
Huh,
Yeah.
that's weird.
Well, the interesting thing is that market that you guys were talking about, I used to go to my Amazon locker there, and that market is shut down.
Yeah,
No,
Yeah.
it's so sad. I miss their sandwiches.
Yeah.
I know. They had good panini.
Yeah.
But that was a VMU? I mean, it was only one floor.
That's on the, we didn't touch any properties on that side of Menchaca. We
Yeah,
can't.
that would be
Oh, it's the
Western
other
Trails
side.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that Western Trails opted any in.
Oh,
Yeah.
that explains a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
But the change in compatibility will affect the other side of the street too,
Oh, okay.
up and down
Hmm.
Manchac. Then the
Well-
new alter proposal will affect both sides of Manchac.
Both sides of Metric, so the two neighbors.
Both sides of South First, both sides of Ben White, both sides of Sassney.
Well, I guess it maybe isn't in your area, but the drivers will just come straight down through that intersection.
I didn't even know that was even brought before the board. There's so many board meetings, it's hard to attend them all. You know,
I'm within 500 feet. I didn't get an amendment notice at all, but I'll go see. Maybe it tried. Somebody's trying to masquerade as an exemption, I think.
oh, wow.
Yeah. So Southwood Officers at Gmail reaches you guys.
What was
What's
that?
that?
Southwood Officers at gmail.com reaches your team.
Southwoodofficers@gmail.com. Yes, sir.
Okay. And would you know anyone at Western Trails? I think I lost track of during the event.
I can ask at the next ANC, I can ask through the Austin Neighborhoods Council to find out who the president is of Western
Okay.
for you.
I
So
think they
yes,
have
just
two.
send me an
two-
email so that I have your email and then I can
Happy
ask the
to.
Austin Neighborhoods Council.
Happy
I
to. The
think they
offer still
actually-
stands. You need flyers, printers. I'd be honored to help the mission of the community.
Thank you
I
so
think-
much.
Thank you.
I think they have two competing neighborhood associations over there now. They
I
had a
think you
schism.
might be right.
They had a schism.
Oh, wow.
Huh?
I would reach out to both.
Okay, I will. Thank
I'll see if I can find out what the names of both are for you, Andy.
you. That's so sweet. I'll email you in the next 2 minutes.
All right, cool. Does anybody else have any exciting news about the neighborhood or anything? You have anything, Ray? I see you down there. No, nothing. Do you have anything, Tess?
Yes, I just wanted to say we got the street is lined for on the bicycle lane and going both ways. And it seems to have slowed traffic on Emerald Forest and Vincent a little bit.
Good.
We still need to work on getting some stops on that speedway, but because of the markings for the bicycles, it's helped a little bit.
Oh, thank goodness. That's really good to hear. Yeah, I saw all those new fancy poles they put up. I was glad that Jimmy was driving and I wasn't because they were making me nervous.
Well, that's why it's looking
I would have
so
slowed down
good.
too. I'm glad it had that other effect though, for sure. Does anybody else have any other business they'd like to share? David?
I just have one thing, and this is an old friend of mine in the neighborhood has had demolitions on her street. She lives on Enchanted. Where she didn't receive notice as required by city rules. And so she reached out to the city or Nan Kitchen's office, and it made a difference. Development Services or whatever immediately sent her a letter saying it'd be more on top of it. And I mention this because there are a lot of demolitions happening in our neighborhood. That's well known. And whatever we think about those, I have concerns. They certainly ought to be following the rules and letting us know if we're within a certain number of feet. I should probably, if she would give me permission, take those messages that she sent me and just post them to the list so that people know what to do and know to kind of be on the lookout for this sort of thing.
Yeah, if she could, I mean, or even if
Well,
doesn't
she
want to
got
share-
off the list years ago because she got tired of what she sees as negativity on the listserv.
I understand. Maybe you can take her emails and edit out, just take out the educational part.
Yeah,
so
I'll do
you
that.
don't
If
have,
she, yeah,
you know,
if she
this
gives
is-
information, I'll be happy to do that.
That would be awesome, because that would be very, very helpful, I think, for folks.
I've
Yep.
noticed a lot more of those yellow signs that say demolition, and I did not notice those until David, you said something about that, and now I see them posted close to the street anymore. I still think they're building them too damn big, but that's my opinion. And too white,
Or black, too black.
black,
painting the-
too
they're
white or
painting the-
black.
Painting the houses black and painting on
Boring.
black shingles. It was like,
I know.
probably until they get their summer electric bills, and then they may probably be ripping those shingles off and painting them houses a different color.
They may have the money to do all of that though.
I know,
bills,
right?
Et cetera.
Yeah, but our grid can't handle that.
Mhm.
The one
Yeah.
thing I did notice, the neighborhood association signs kind of look like the demo signs.
That's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Mhm. And it does, I have noticed as well that there seems, as I walk, that there seems to be a lot of trees getting removed off these lots that just seem coincidentally right in the right places. And I'm thinking, are trees coming down in the night that we're not seeing? Or, so I guess.
Probably.
That's exactly why
Take a
I wanted
picture,
to
take a
have
picture and
um,
send it to 311.
DSD come and talk about the Austin tree protection at the next general meeting. When I saw the DSD offer to come to meetings, I like just jumped on it
Yeah, that's a good idea.
and started the ball rolling to
I
see
like it.
if I could get somebody lined up, because we really need to be empowered to know what we can do to protect them. I mean, some of those trees are older than us. And, you know, that would be a crying shame if we didn't do something to try to protect them.
Agree.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? No? All right, let me look at my notes and make sure I didn't miss anything. Save dates. Nope. Everyone knows about the Google group, right? I think everyone is on the Google group. It's here. You don't, Jill?
Mm-mm.
Okay. If you go to Google Groups, is it Google Groups, right?
Google Groups.
Google Groups, and look for Southwood neighbors. And you can submit a request to join, and we'll get you approved for that. If you have any trouble with that, just send a message to the Southwood officers at gmail.com, and we can do it that way too. We can directly add you.
Okay, thank you. Thank
So
you.
yeah, I share an extraordinary amount of information through the Google groups.
That's great.
But I mean, one of my former employers always told me knowledge is power. And so I want to empower all of you to be aware of as much that's going around in Austin as possible. So yeah. So if it's not a topic that you're interested, just scroll on by. Yeah, David goes, oh yeah, I scroll by all the time on
The,
it.
the delete key can be our friend.
All righty. So if anyone else doesn't have any other business that they'd like to share, I guess we'll call this meeting to an end and adjourn. Y'all are
Thank
good?
y'all.
Thank you.
All right,
very much.
fabulous. Thank you so much for coming tonight
Thank you.
and spending the evening with us.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
Thank
great
you.
evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Stop recording.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.